Hi everyone, and thank you for coming to my first Bad Dog Agility live Facebook webinar. So we're going to give everybody just a few minutes to make sure everything is working. We're going to double check it on your end, we're going to double check it on our end, and make sure everything is working good. Hopefully you guys should have a live stream of myself in the front yard with high five and a cot set up here, and then you should be able to have good audio. You should be able to hear me. I am mic'd up. We will not have issues that Sarah had last week of overheating. Last week, I know in Texas when Sarah did hers, the tech overheated because it was too warm. And they had some issues, and actually we are not having the issue, that issue. We'll have the opposite issue. It's a little chilly out here, but we are here in Ohio. It is 7 p.m. local time, getting ready to kind of sunset. Hopefully we're going to grab as many of you guys live as possible, and I will try to grab some questions at the end. But we are here to do a little bit of talking about the advantages and benefits to the treat and train. All right, so we know that many of us are stuck inside. We're doing small space training given all that is going on. So rather than doing a sequence this week, we decided to talk about a training tool that you can be using at home, and that is the Treat and Train. So the Treat and Train is a device that is formerly known as the Manners Minder. And we're going to go ahead on your screen and show a close-up of the display. Now, what you're going to see here is a couple controls, and I will go over the controls, a little bit of feedback for you guys on those, and then we'll talk about kind of getting your dog started with that. So, on the left, you're going to see the off and on. All right, that is exactly what it says, the off and on. If we go one in from that, you're going to see the option of single treat, multi-treat, cue dispense, along with a knob and a button at the bottom that slides from fixed to variable. Now, what you will notice is that that is all in a giant box that says down and stay session. We're not really going to address that or talk much about that this evening. What we're going to be focusing on is the single dispense button. So if we go over, you're going to see a blue button that puts the volume on off, low, medium, or high, and then you're going to have the choice of a channel. Now, the channel is going to be important for two reasons. One, you're going to want to make sure that the channel of your Manners Minder matches up with the channel of your remote. Okay? So you will have a remote that comes with your Treat and Train, and I do not have an image of this, but it is going to be a tiny little remote control, and it's going to easily be lost, so you may opt to put that on a lanyard or some type of device to help hang on to it. When you take it off the back where the battery is, it's going to have the option for those same 4 channels. So you're going to want to make sure that your device matches up with your remote. So one of the things, if you can't get the two to communicate, make sure they're on the same channel. The other benefit to that channel button is when you're working with multiple Manners Minders. So you can see out here that I actually have 2. I have the one that I'm demoing for you guys, and I have one set up over here for high five. And this one here is going to be set on channel 4. All right, so we have one device on channel 4, one device on channel 1, so that when I hit the button for her, it doesn't affect this one. So if you are using 2 devices in your session or you're training with friends, you may want to make sure you're on separate channels. Now, you also can't see on the remote, but I will say that there are 2 buttons here. There's going to be a dispense button, and then there's going to be the downstay button. Again, the downstay button and the downstay functions are not things that we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to be focusing just on the single dispense button. Okay, so basically what happens when you hit this, it communicates to the device and a treat comes out. So a couple other things about the device itself before we get talking about its benefits. It's going to come with a couple different discs. These discs have different size holes in them. Okay, so bigger holes, smaller holes. That's going to allow you to adjust what device you're using, what disc you're using for what kind of treats you're using. All right, so if you are using a bigger treat, you may want to use the bigger disc. A smaller treat, you're going to want to use the smaller disc. All right, so we'll put this big one in, and it basically is going to sit right in here, and it's going to clip in. All right, and then that's going to allow you to use whatever treats you would like. Now, You can use kibble. You can just use their breakfast or dinner if you use kibble. Zooks are good. I make my own. I have several recipes and actually included the treats that I'm using here in the PDF that you can get at the end of this live. So we'll tell you about that, but you can download a PDF that's going to have a lot of the notes of things I'm talking about. Also includes this recipe. So these are treats that I just make at home in a dot pan. A little bit higher value than what's on the cot. What's on the cot there is kibble. What's over here, these homemade tuna treats. All right, and we can load those up, and those are going to rotate through and dispense out of the device. Now, you have your device, you know how it works. Always make sure the batteries are good to go as well. Now let's talk about getting your dog used to it. So I think the mistake that I see a lot of people make is they get this treat and train and they just set it up, load it with treats, and try to implement it right into their training right away. And I'm here to tell you that that's not the best way to go. What we want to do is we want to first make sure our dog is familiar with the device. So I typically will recommend, long before it has treats in it, just letting the dog see what it is. All right, so high five, come here. This one I just loaded in treats in it, but you could get it out of the box before it has treats, let the dog sniff it, let the dog check it out. I would encourage you to do this without treats in it, because a lot of dogs, as soon as they see the treats are in it and that lid closes down over top, they think it's one of those puzzles and they think it's one of those games. So what we want to do is let them first check out the device without the food in it. All right, then we can practice even hitting the motor and hitting the button without the treats coming out to let them get used to the noise. Now, I typically like to load treats in it before I do that, because what I want the dog to do is correlate that that motor and that noise is going to offer them reinforcement. Okay, high five, rest. So once the dog has kind of checked it out, all right, you can start with the volume off. All right, so the one that I have over here on the cot, and we'll talk a little bit about stationing here in a moment, has no volume. And the reason that I have no volume on that is because the beep that it makes has been taught to my dogs to be the release to the manners minder. On the cot, because there's nowhere to go, there is no release to the manners minder, they're simply staying on the cot, I do not have the volume on. So you may not be able to hear this, but when I hit it, there is no beeping. What you'll hear is probably the motor dispensing the treats. All right, but now let's compare that to this. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on, and I'm gonna put the volume on high. All right, and I'll stand nice and close to it, because now when I beep it, it's going to make a louder noise. Now, I would expect that as I do this, she will release off of her cot and over to the manners minder. All right, come on. And she did not, and that's okay. We've been working a lot on our stationing. She's used to her name to a release off. But basically, it's going to make that beep, and that is going to be her cue to then take cookies from that. So as soon as it beeps, it's going to spin. A treat is going to come down this device here. And again, in her case, the beep has been what's trained her to mark the behavior and then expect reinforcement from the treat and train. Now, one thing about the treat and train I'll mention here real quick before we move on. This tray on the end does pop off, okay? So it's going to come off and slide off, and what that's going to do is it's going to allow the treats to go straight down onto the ground, or if you set this on top of a crate and you're working any type of crate, to fall into the crate. Otherwise, it has the tray on there, okay? So she is familiar with the treat and train. She knows what it is. She knows what the beep is. And what's really important as we go into our training is that the dog understands what gives them permission to go to the treat and train and what does not. So for her, as I mentioned, the beep does give her permission. So if I were to ask for a behavior, come here, hi, sit. When she sits and I hit that beep, right? So I'm hitting the dispense, you're going to hear the beep. The beep marks the behavior and then gives her permission to go over to the manners minder, okay? If I sit, if I give her a different cue, take, which means that the food is coming from me and she get up and comes to me, you can see she's not going over to that manners minder. She's not obsessed with that manners minder. It's not all consuming. And I think these are some of the foundations that people forget to lay before they try to integrate it into the agility. So I hear a lot of people say that when they integrated the manners minder out into their training and they put it at the end of the weave poles, the dog went crazy, the dog couldn't weave, the dog was popping out because all it was thinking about was getting to the manners minder. And it's this type of marker training and consistency within your verbals that must be laid before you even take it out onto the field. So I'm going to go ahead and add one more layer in here, and I'm going to go ahead and add her toy. So what you're going to see, come on, hi, is that I can ask for a behavior, and based on what marker I give, she will either expect reinforcement from me in the form of food or toys, or from the manners minder. And I want good impulse control with this. Ready? Left. So that was the beep. So that went to the treat and train. Left. Get it. Yes, good girl. Get it. Get it. So that was a get it. So you can see she left the treat and train and went for the toy, and she actually didn't even move towards the treat and train at the end of the behavior. She actually, get it, get it, get it, finished her behavior and waited for that marker. Out. So we'll try that one again. Out. Left. Get it. Yay, good girl. So you can see she's not obsessing over the treat and train and running over it to the point of not being able to function. Out. Sit. Good girl. Okay, and I'm still going to give a little bit of verbal reinforcement. That's just habit of me being pretty exciting and pretty engaging. Down. Good girl. So it does end the behavior for her. So when she hears that beep, she is allowed to end whatever position she's in and run over to that manners minder. Touch. Touch. Take. So again, take is a marker, but it's going to be food from my hand, so she's not running over there. All right, go ahead and rest up there. Okay, so when she gets onto the cot, I did hit the opposite remote control, it's in my pocket, to reinforce her over on the cot. And that's going to be one of the first things that we talk about in terms of ways we can use these manners minders, or excuse me, these treat and trains to our advantage. So one of the ways that I have used it with my dogs is to help with a little bit of my stationing. Now I think you can see over in the camera, she has just opted to lay down on her cot. One of the things that I find very desirable is for my dogs to be able to exhibit some impulse control and be able to hold themselves together while they're seeing other dogs, whether it be in a class setting where I want my dog to wait their turn, whether it be I'm working one dog and I want to go off the field and work another, or excuse me, I'm on the field working one dog and I want the other to be off the field controlling themselves. Maybe it's just I want to leave my dog on their cot or on their station while I go out and move jump bars. I have used the treat and train to help me be able to reinforce on that cot and on that station when I'm not there. So while she's on that position, I can go around and I can come out and I can run in place and I can work my other dog. I can set my jump bars. I can do what's needed, all while still reinforcing her on the cot with the remote control. So it's a really handy device to be able to reward remotely. And that's basically going to be the big benefit of this. And I think everybody likes to use it right away into agility, or a lot of handlers do, but there's some other agility benefits to it. And that, again, is this stationing and this idea of being able to work one dog. And while you're working that dog, while you're standing out here, you're working with treats, you're working with toys, still being able to reinforce your dog for being over there. Because if I'm out here with one dog, I've got my toy, I've got my treats, nothing's happening over there. The further away from my dog that I move, the more appealing it is going to be for them to exit off of that cot and come towards me. Now again, I do have the volume off on this one. Part of the cot is designed for her to be kind of an off button, kind of a place where she can relax and veg out. My goal is not for it to be a working position. Therefore, I'm not having the beep, which is the marker off of the treat and train. So I will use that. Again, you only need one treat and train for that. You would need the treat and train for the one that's on the cot. The dog that you're working, if you're working another dog, you can just reward from you. All right, so I can call her off. High five. Take. Reinforce her here. Send her back. Go rest. And when she gets over there, hit that manners minder. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about how we use this in agility. So we've established some foundations to it. Our dog is understanding what it is, what cues them to it, having some impulse control, possibly using it for stationing. Let's talk about where we can use it on course. Now, one of the places that I will very frequently recommend using it, and we get a lot of comments and questions about here at Bad Dog, is for weave pole training. So using the treat and train at the end of your weave poles, allows you to have a little bit of a lure or a target for the dog to drive forward and go forward, while also having very accurate placement of reinforcement. So for those of you who are accustomed to tossing your treats or throwing your toys at the end of the weave poles, but maybe you have really bad aim, you end up throwing too soon and the dog pops out, but the toy's already out of your hand, or you're trying to toss the treat 6 feet away and it hits the ceiling and goes 20 feet away. The treat and train allows for a little bit more accuracy. So we're going to go ahead and show you a video. And what you're going to see on this video, I don't think the sound of the video will come through too much. So I will talk you through a few things. So what you're going to see here is the video playing, and you're seeing different, I put up a little audio, or excuse me, a little visual icons to let you know exactly what I was asking for. Again, I was worried that the video volume wouldn't show through. So what I am doing is I'm asking for a variety of things at the end of the weave pole, starting out with the release of the manners minder with me hanging further and further back. Now you can see where I start to fade the manners minder, excuse me, the treat train, I apologize for that, by adding on other behaviors. So adding on the jump, adding on the backside, and asking for a couple different things. So again, that all goes back to the marker system and the idea that the dog doesn't become consuming about that treat and train, and that they will respond to the verbal. So as you saw, that treat and train was located right at the base of the jump. All right, and I was able to either click and reinforce her straight to the manners minder, but I also was able to do a few where I released at the end of the weave poles, not released, at the end of the weave poles I marked with get it, and she exited back to the toy. And then after a few, I asked for different jump behaviors, the front side of the jump, the back side of the jump, to make sure that, again, just because the manners minder was in the general location of the jump, that doesn't give her permission to automatically run for it and drive for it, okay? Now, jumping over to another place on course, used kind of using the treat and train for the same purposes of building independence, right? You'll notice on those weave poles I was hanging back, I was staying away, letting her have that performance independent of my location, is going to be the contacts. Okay, now I'm first just going to show you a photo coming down the dog walk where there are 2 treat and trains. Now, I talked earlier about making sure they're on separate channels and the benefits to having 2 treat and trains. And here's going to be an example. We use the treat and train a lot in our running contact training. Okay, and I will see handlers who will place a manners minder on the right. Dog comes down that running dog walk and they're hollering right, and the dog will turn. They move it over to the left and they holler left. But the question still is the dog responding to the verbal, or is the dog targeting to where the manners minder is located? In a position where I have 2 of them set up, one on each side of the dog walk, as you can see there, my dog now has to respond to the verbal and actually choose correctly. So they're not going to be able to have that visual target or lure that I would ultimately have if there was only one there. Now, we're not going to get too much into the running contacts tonight, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at how we can use that treat and train for stopped contacts. Now, the video that we are going to show is going to actually kind of demonstrate a couple different variations of using that treat and train. You're going to see it first at the end of the dog walk, then ultimately over to the teeter, and you're going to see it in different positions. So the first position that we are going to see is that we are using the treat and train right at the base of the 2 on 2 off, right at the base of the dog walk, to really guide the dog and lure the dog into position. So you will see that the dog does not need to leave position in order to get that reinforcement. So once he comes into position, the treat and train is there to kind of stop and encourage. I'm able to reinforce when the front feet hit the ground, and then I could release off. Now, for a lot of dogs, this becomes too much of a visual lure. So this does not tend to be how I utilize the treat and train in my contact training, but rather what I will do is I will move it further from the dog walk. So now you can see it off further away as a way to release my dog forward after they've hit in position. So once my dog has an understanding of the 2 on 2 off, I don't do as much rewarding in position as I do rewarding out of position. So as the dog comes into the 2 on 2 off, I would then hit that button, and as I mentioned, the beep then does in behavior and gives my dog permission to exit off of that dog walk into the treat train. Here you're seeing a little bit on the teeter. Notice now that I'm trying to remain very stationary. All right, and then as we go up to that full teeter, Also keeping that treat and train 4, 5, 6 feet away, waiting for position, releasing forward, with the goal here of being able to hang back further and further until my dog is driving down to the end of the teeter, hitting that position, and then I'm able to reinforce. So a couple different ways that you can use that treat and train on the contacts depending on what your contact criteria is going to be. Are you going to do a running, a 2 on 2 off, a 4 on, some form of a stop versus a running, and whether or not you want it to be close to the board or whether or not you want it to be further away. So now we talked a little bit about the idea of getting the dog to respond to the verbals despite my location, despite the position of the manners minder off of the contacts. But now let's take a look at a video where we can see how we can use these treat and trains to work on our handling. So what you're going to see on this video is I'm going to be doing some verbal training, some distance training, kind of the two going hand in hand, working on some threadle work. Now, what you probably cannot tell unless you take a quick look in is there's actually 2 treat and trains located out there. So there's going to be the one on the left wing, all right, that's more visible to the handler, or excuse me, to the viewer here. All right, and then there's also one on the opposite side of the jump, all right, at the opposite wing. And that is so that when she is curling as opposed to slicing, we still have that immediate reinforcement, but I don't want her responding to the manners minder, to the treat and train, to decide which way to jump that jump. I want her responding to the verbal, right? So we are using that treat and train to reward remotely, to reward away from us, reward for the verbal, and having both of them out there so that it doesn't become too strong of a lure or a target. So we want to use this treat and train as a lure and a target in some cases, especially early on in our training. But again, we don't want our dog's understanding of the behavior or understanding of that verbal to be dependent. So I do not think that you guys need to own 2 of these, but I did want to show you the benefit to having 2 of them. And if you have already done some of this foundation training, if you've already done some of this preliminary training, how you can kind of elevate things and take things to the next level. Now, my treat and trains are both ordered from Clean Run. You can just go to cleanrun.com. They have great customer service. They offer the treat and trains. They offer just the remote if you've lost one. They have some tools there to help you with this. I'm sure there are other suppliers out there as well, but always trying to support those within the agility community. So I do recommend heading over to Clean Run and checking that out if you do not have one, but you're realizing the benefits to it, or if you have one, but maybe you want to get a second one, okay? So what we've done for you guys tonight is we've gone ahead and put together a PDF, all right, that you will be able to get at our website, baddogagility.com/treat. All right, so we're putting that website up on the screen for you right now. All right, so if you head over to that website, what that's going to do is it'll allow you to put your email in, and you will get a downloadable PDF reviewing some of the things that we've talked about tonight, along with that recipe that I was talking about to make your own treats that fit into the manners minder. Of course, you can use anything that fits within the kind of the holes that are provided in the disc. You want something that's a little bit of a solid object there. Obviously, things like you know, spread peanut butter or baby food aren't going to work out. But that PDF, it's going to talk a little bit about, you know, different things that you can use your manners minder for. Stationing, weave poles, contacts, distance, some verbal work. And I think the big thing to take away here from tonight, or the big thing that I'm hoping you really value in tonight's little lecture here, is the manners minder can be a very powerful lure or target. We can use that to our advantage to let the dog know it's there, to let them know that it holds value, and to give them something to go after and go towards. It allows us to reward accurately, both in terms of our location and placement of reinforcement, but also because we control that remote, it allows us to only reward when the dog gives us that correct behavior. So we could place a bowl out there with food in it, but if the dog were to pop out of the weed poles, if the dog were to jump off the contact and reach that bowl before you do, they're going to get reinforced. So it allows very accurate and consistent reinforcement. And it allows the handler to reward the dog for being away from them. All right, so that you don't have to be close. Again, whether it's something as simple as you're stationing, where you want to be away to go set jump bars or to go build a course or to work your other dog, or whether you're trying to improve your distance work and your verbal training on course. All right, so we'll take a quick look here at Facebook to see if there were any questions. If anybody had any questions, feel free, guys, even if you're watching this, if you have a few questions and I don't get to them before I turn the camera off here, I will be able to get back on and follow up on those and answer some of those for you guys after the fact. But all in all, guys, I really appreciate you coming out here. We survived the first of my Facebook Lives through Bad Dog Agility, and I hope you really find some benefit and can improve your training at home.